Hello everyone, welcome back to my Spider-Man review series, and today we are going to be reviewing the 9th Spider-Man film, Far From Home. This film is absolutely huge, came off Endgame, came off one of literally the biggest movie in the world, and one of the biggest superhero movies in the world as well. It has a lot to live up to, and you know, commercially, it absolutely did. I mean, it's the Spider-Man film that's made the most money of any other Spider-Man film. I think it made the most money out of any other Spider-Man film. It was huge. Everyone loved it. It got an extended cut due to how many people liked it. That was in cinemas for a limited time. I didn't get to see that, but you know, it is what it is. It was a pretty big movie, and a lot of people were excited for it, including myself. You know, coming off the end of Endgame, I was hoping for something that'll give us answers to what's next, and it does. It answers some of them. It does a pretty good job on answering some of them. It's a great watch. It's an easy watch. You know, it's fun. And it's full of action, you know, great cast. Overall, this is a great film. To start us off, one of the things that makes these Spider-Man films, you know, what they are, in my opinion, is Tom Holland. Tom Holland is amazing as Peter Parker. I feel like he captures it perfectly. Well, at least in the direction that they pushed it, he does a really good job with this character. And he's a great actor in a lot of other things that I've seen him in recently as well. I think they could do a bit more with his dramatic side in future installments, but for now, it's all right where it is. I'm happy with. I'm settling where it is at the moment. Another great thing that I love about this movie is where it takes us. Far from home. It takes us far from home. This movie is not set in New York. It's set in many locations like Italy, Germany, you know, all these different places. We end up in London in the end, and I think this is good. It's fresh. It's a fresh take. Every Spider-Man film we've seen so far has been set in New York City, whether that's an alternate New York City from the Spider-Verse or just, you know, your regular old New York City. It's different. We get different locations. So that was cool to see how Spider-Man sort of interacts and gets to use his powers in these different locations, because obviously they don't have the same architectural structures as New York. Stuff is different, like there's water around and maybe shorter buildings, or, you know, less stuff to swing on. It was cool to see Spider-Man in these different environments, you know, it was cool. One of the more weird things that I feel like this film does is include the character of Brad. Brad, to me, is annoying as hell. And his character I don't really like in the film. The thing that makes me like the inclusion of Brad isn't Brad himself, but what he does to Peter, and that is because it's just really relatable. Like, you know, you've got this plan with the girl of your dreams, you're like, you really fancy this girl, and then there's just this other guy that's just come out of nowhere, and he's better than you in every way. He's more confident, you know, and all the girls love him, as Ned says. All the girls in school love him. You know, and he just seems to have everything going for him, and he's just come out of nowhere, because obviously everyone blipped, and this kid grew up while they were all blipped and just became the guy. Do you know what I mean? So kind of relatable, came out of nowhere, and, you know, he just pretty much, he stops Peter getting with MJ for the majority of the film. And I think we've all been through that sort of feeling where we've had a crush, and there's just that one guy that your crush likes, and you're just like, oh, that's never going to happen, is it? You know what I mean? One of the best aspects of all the MCU films, in my opinion, is the comedy, right? Most MCU films are really funny. Even Endgame, with the really dark tones, is just, it has really funny and memorable moments, and this film has a fair amount of funny moments. A lot of the comedy in this film lands. That's part of what makes it so fun to watch and fresh to watch. The teacher, in my opinion, the one who says, at the end, he says, they've come together, they've joined forces like the Power Rangers or something, and when he tells Brad off for, he goes, okay, I'm going to be the cool teacher here, but taking pictures of people in bathrooms is just wrong, you know, and he's saying all that stuff. There's a lot of other light humour in there like that as well. They're just like, you know, they just chucked in little one-liners everywhere, and it's just like, oh bro, that's bare funny. I'm speaking with like my Welsh slang now, and it probably doesn't make sense, but that's really funny. And it's part of what makes this movie really fun to watch for me. I feel like if there's one thing that you can point this movie out for doing right and doing well, is Mysterio, right? So for starters, the cast of Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio was just spot on. He did a great job. The suit looks amazing. Everything about that suit is like, you know, it's like literally stripped from the comics, the classic design, but updated to look, you know, more modern day, and it just looks sick. Like his suit is really cool in this film. I like how they've also updated his powers, so he's not using old theatre tricks. He's using like modern technology to create projections of illusions and stuff. That's really cool. So basically they've taken everything I love from the original Mysterio and just modernized it, and it just, yeah, it's ripped straight from the comics, apart from like being more up to date with today's tech and stuff. The only thing I don't like about Mysterio's setup really in this movie is that he's another Iron Man villain, if you get what I mean. Like in the comics, Mysterio is very, you know, he's very much a Spider-Man villain. He shows up as to be Spider-Man's villain, whereas in this, just like Vulture in Homecoming that I have a problem with, he's bad because he has a problem with Tony, and it feels like Spider-Man is just the cleanup crew, and you know, he's just here to clean up Tony's mess because there's all these people that hate Tony for what he did, and they're bad, and they end up taking out on Spider-Man. I suppose he does become Spider-Man's villain towards the end, because Spider-Man sort of does things that makes Mysterio need to kill him to get him out of the way, otherwise, you know, Mysterio will be outed as a villain and all that stuff. So he becomes more of a Spider-Man villain at the end, but his main purpose for being bad in the first place is Tony, and that kind of like throws me off again. I'd like to see a Spider-Man film where the villain is actually mad at Spider-Man for a change. Now, as much as this film is really fun and great to watch whenever, there are a few things in it that just really, I don't know, I just don't care for, or they really put me off certain aspects of the film. And the biggest one is right at the beginning, when we get that opening PowerPoint montage of the memoriam of all the passed away Avengers, and you're just like, bro, I've just watched all these people die and I really care for them, and you're trying to turn that into something funny. And like I get it, but like sometimes what I see these films doing is, in Homecoming as well, it turns everything serious that happens into a joke, and you don't take anything seriously then. Whereas like an event as big as Endgame, I feel like they should have just, rather than making that a joke, I feel like they should have really, you know, they could have really played on some heartstrings of that and really upped the drama in the first opening minutes. One of the things that I think this film does the worst ever, right? It does a terrible job of this, and it's that it's trying to set up Peter as his own hero. Now, you'd think, hey, that's pretty easy, right? You just got to make him do stuff by himself, and make him do stuff that no one else had done before, so that he can build his own character and be who he is supposed to be, and, you know, fulfill his destiny. Well, yeah, that is pretty easy, but we get this moment in the Avengers plane, or the Quinjet or whatever, and get a moment where Peter's like, yeah, I'm going to build my own suit and it's going to be awesome, and I'm Spider-Man, this is sick. And Happy's like, right, cool, bro, you do that thing, because, you know, you're your own man, and Tony would be proud of you and stuff. And then he opens up a bed, a fabricated bed. He opens up the menus, and it looks like Tony Stark's menus when he was building his Iron Man suit. And then he plays some music, and that's AC/DC, Back in Black. You could not have done that at a worse time. It's funny, don't get me wrong, but like the meaning behind that whole section is like, oh my god, Peter is finally growing up. He's becoming his own man. He doesn't need anyone anymore. He's his own man. And then he does everything that Tony would do. Why? Why would you do that? I don't know. I would have found it cooler if like, I don't mind him using the fabricator so much. He's just using what's at his disposal, right? But with the music or something, he could have given a hint to Peter or something by putting Left Hand Free on by Alt J. That's the first song we hear when we're introduced to Peter in Civil War. You know what I mean? That would have been so much cooler. And finally, my biggest gripe with these movies, it's not a story problem, it's not a character problem, nothing like that. It's the overuse of CGI. These films, if you look at the BTS pictures, have some of the most beautiful costumes ever created for a Spider-Man film. For Spider-Man anyway. They're up there with TASM 2, right? And they just CGI over them. And they look plastic. When you look at BTS pictures, they look really like, you know, they look fluffy, and they look textured, and they look, you know, like a suit. And then we get into the actual film, and there's a big thick layer of paint, of just CGI paint, where it just looks like plastic. Like there's no texture to it, and the texture there is there just looks like plasticky and rubbery. The worst, like you can see it a lot on the red and black suit towards the end in the final fight, but one of the worst CGI sections for me is the illusion sequence, when he goes to find Nick Fury and Maria, and you know there's that whole sequence where he's like changing the suits and all that, and they go into Paris and he drops MJ and he's in the snow globe and all that stuff. It looks like a video game. It looks really good, don't get me wrong. It's a really visually appealing scene, but it doesn't look real. And that could play into their hands because it's an illusion after all, but it doesn't look real. It looks like a video game. It looks like Spider-Man PS4. You know what I mean? And again, still looks beautiful, but it's way too much CGI, and they just go overboard with it when they have these beautiful suits. I have nothing against using CGI. CGI is great when it's used well, you know, and it can be used for so many things to make filmmakers' lives easier. But when you have beautiful suits like that, and you have craft people that are building these beautiful suits for on set, and then you just smack a layer of CGI on it, that's such a kick in the balls to those people, man, because those suits are gorgeous, and I wish they'd just show them off a bit more. So guys, that was my review of Spider-Man Far From Home. My verdict is, it's a really fun, family, action-packed, funny film that, you know, I could probably watch at any point. I like this a lot more than Homecoming. It's more fun to watch than Homecoming in my opinion, and it doesn't drag as much. Homecoming doesn't necessarily drag, but Far From Home feels really fast-paced, and not too fast-paced, but it just moves along at a very nice pace where you're like, right, we're getting somewhere all the time. Something's always happening that keeps you looped in, and you're like, yeah, this is good, I'm having fun. Like, it feels like you're genuinely on a roller coaster of fun with this film. The only stuff that lets this film down, in my opinion, is just that there are these little nitpicky things in it, and you know, I've just previously mentioned them, and they slightly just let it down a little bit. So that's sort of my opinion on it as a film as a whole. If I had to look at it from like my Spider-Man fanboy part of stuff, I don't like this Spider-Man, okay? I'm gonna be dead honest. The way the Marvel Studios are taking this Peter Parker, I don't really like it. The only reason why I didn't bring this up in the main review is because this has nothing to do with the film being bad. As a Spider-Man film, you can't even say it's a bad Spider-Man film either, because if you want to make your own interpretation of Spider-Man, then go for it. You know, me and Nathan at Film Form making Spider-Man movies, we're not conforming to any comics or any other movies. We're not conforming to that, we're telling our own story, you know. So if Marvel want to tell their own story with that, then go with it, you know. I'm there to enjoy the movie for what it is. I don't enjoy it as much as a Spider-Man movie, but as just a movie in general, an action movie, it's a great watch. You know, I really enjoy it, and I can't really say too much bad about it as a film. As a Spider-Man fan, as I said, it's not really my cup of tea, but that's not for me to judge, you know. Everyone has their own interpretation of characters, and that's cool. Thank you guys very much for watching. I'll see you in the next video, which I don't even know what that'll be yet, but I hope to see you very soon. Stay safe, guys.